Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I have a little bit of time. Hopefully I'll be able to finish this video real quick. So last night I saw All Eyes on Me, and I'm going to do this quick review of the film. You know, first of all, the film had been criticized by a couple of famous people. Um, the first being 50 Cent. He said that it was trash and blah, blah, blah. And then also Jada Pinkett Smith criticized the film as not being accurate, as not accurately portraying her friendship with Tupac. She pointed out how he never read that poem to her. She talked about how she never had a conversation with him backstage. She never went to any of his concerts. So those are some of the complaints that people had about the film. And then also some of my friends on Facebook were talking about how it was garbage and all this and that. And at first, I wasn't even going to see it because of all that negative attention that it received. But I went ahead and saw it anyway because this is a film that I had been waiting to see. There had been a lot of promotion of this film. Tupac is one of my favorite rap artists. So I went ahead and watched the film. So here's what I think about the film. In terms of the acting, I think that Demetrius Shipp did a decent job pretending to be Tupac. You know, he had a lot of Tupac's mannerisms down. He had Tupac's voice down in a lot of ways. But one thing about him is he didn't come across exactly like Tupac in terms of, you know, presenting like an intimidating kind of image. You know, Tupac had this, you know, facial expression or the way he carried himself or swag or whatever that projected this idea that he was a thug, you know what I'm saying? Like somebody that's potentially dangerous and all that kind of stuff. At least that was the role that he presented towards the people when they saw him. But this character didn't present that kind of image. He didn't seem to be intimidating at all. And maybe Tupac was like that in real life. He wasn't intimidating. And I think that probably that's the case. I think that his character, you know, this character that Tupac created was an exaggeration, you know, a caricature of what he really was like. Because Tupac, like if you look at those early pictures of him in high school, he does not look like a thug. I mean, he went to Baltimore School for the Arts, which is a great school. It is not some place inhabited by juvenile delinquents and thugs. Uh, so that's so I don't think he was really about that thug life like that. But anyway, that's the persona that he presented. And it seems like Demetrius Shipp didn't get across that persona in the film. So that's one criticism that I have of the film. But I think that the acting overall was good. And in terms of character development, like you did get to learn about Tupac and all that kind of stuff and about his mother. But I think that they could have done more character development. I think that they spent too much time reenacting scenes that we had watched before in prior documentaries. And instead of doing, I mean, it's better to just go see the documentaries instead of watching somebody try to reenact the documentaries. I think the purpose of a film is to bring something new that hasn't been presented in documentaries. And that's something that this film failed to do. There was nothing new in this film, nothing at all. For the most part, it was just a reenactment of a lot of things that are in documentaries, and also it seemed like a big music video where you had a concert going on, you had a lot of his music going on, and all that kind of stuff. You did learn some things about him, like, you know, I heard that he was trying to get away from death row at one point. Like I heard about that in documentaries before, but they didn't really go into it in depth. I didn't realize that he was virtually on his way out the door. I didn't realize that he had a 3-record, you know, contract, and that he had reached that 3-record contract with his, you know, his double CD, All Eyes on Me, and then the Machiavelli. So I didn't realize that he had reached that max and was ready to leave. And you know, so that's something that was interesting to learn in that film. But I'm sure a lot of other people already knew that stuff. But yeah, and just like the shady nature of the music business, I thought that was interesting about like how this man, despite fulfilling his contract, he still owed the record label all this money for all these expenses, like a car, they purchased a car for him, houses and all that kind of stuff. So it really wasn't him buying himself these things. The record label was buying this stuff for him and charging him for it and adding that to his debt. So just the shady nature of the record company is something that's interesting. That's something that was, exposed in this film. And, when I think about it, I think that Tupac essentially sold his soul to the devil when he decided to sign to Death Row Records. Because what eventually happened is that ended up taking his life. It ended up taking his career down the wrong course. Instead of him building his art form, he spent too much time involved in beefs back and forth with all these various artists. And I think that undermined his these little flies are buzzing around. That undermined his creative process. I mean, when you spend all this time and energy going back and forth with other rappers, I mean, I saw something here on YouTube, and I'll post a link in the description box of all these different beefs that this man had. It wasn't just him against Biggie, but he had beefs with Jay-Z, he had beefs with LL, he had beefs with all these people. And, I just think that didn't help him. So, and I just want to talk about this Biggie beef with, him and Biggie and all that kind of stuff. And just about that in general. I just think that was an unfortunate situation. It seemed like there was a unfortunate set of circumstances where, he's shot in New York and he assumes that Biggie and Puffy had something to do with it, and that fueled this feud between him and Biggie and all that kind of stuff. And I think that the record labels profited from the beef. I think that the media profited from it. And because of that, it was in their interest to keep that stuff going. And that feud eventually led to the death of both of those two great hip-hop artists. I mean, I wonder what hip-hop would be like today if those guys were still around to put in that work, to put out those records and stuff like that. The game would be completely different. I mean, would Jay-Z be in the position that he is in right now if Biggie was still around? I mean, would half of these artists that imitate Tupac really be as big as they are if Tupac was still alive? Those are things that I just think about. And, this film brings up some interesting points about misogyny and hip-hop. And, just about some of the contradictions of Tupac, because on one hand, he's singing keep your head up, and then another one he's singing about he gets around and all this and that, and he don't have time for these hoes and all that stuff, and he's calling them bitches and stuff. So it's a lot of contradictions. And, I think that Delores Tucker was really ahead of her time. I think that she was on point when she criticized the music back then, because of Tupac, because of the message that Tupac had in a lot of his music. A lot of people gravitated towards that thug lifestyle. They didn't get the positive messages from him. Those positive messages in his songs were overwhelmed by the negativity. So he may have had like gems on his records where he's talking about racism or police brutality or sisters keeping their heads up and all that kind of stuff, but the negativity drowned out that positive voice. So his vision, at least according to this film, was to appeal to the people in the street and enlighten them by reaching down to their level and speaking to them in their language and all that kind of stuff. But instead of doing that, instead of reaching them and inspiring them to become revolutionaries or to be concerned about their community, he basically glorified this thug lifestyle that has led to the deaths of many people in our community, that has destroyed hip-hop as we know it. So Tupac is like a tragic figure. I mean, I think that he started off meaning well, but towards the end, it's like he got caught up in that fake character that he created, this fake thug character. And he began to try to live out that thug fantasy. And that's what led to the brother being killed. I mean, Suge and Death Row was the worst thing that he could have ever encountered. And the movie just shows out that Death Row was basically like a a gang, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of conducting business like professionals, they conducted business like some thugs and gangsters and stuff like that, beating up people and doing all kinds of things. And this has all been exposed in prior documentaries. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is recycled from the documentaries. Like they have reenactments of him talking about his rape charge and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, man, it's just a lot of stuff in that movie. Um, they go into that, what happened, or at least from his perspective in terms of the rape allegations. And it's like, if his perspective is correct, man, it's just terrible, man. It's like, according to his perspective, he didn't do anything. He had, relations with the woman, and then he went to sleep and he woke up later, or she came to him later saying that some other guys raped her. So, man, it's just some crazy stuff, man. It's just you got to be careful out here, man. But I won't go into that. But I want to talk about Biggie and Tupac real quick. Like, in terms of like which one is the best. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like back in the day, I liked Tupac, but I didn't appreciate him as much as I do now. Back then, I was a big fan of Biggie Smalls. I like hippie, Biggie and his hip hop and all that kind of stuff, his flow, his lyricism. And, I would rank Biggie over Tupac in terms of just lyricism and, flow and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of range, I would have to give that to Tupac. Like, Tupac was an excellent storyteller. He talked about a wide range of subjects, whereas with Biggie, his subject matter was rather limited. So, those are some of my thoughts about this film. Overall, I'll sum it up. I think the acting was good. I think that it was entertaining. It kept me interested, throughout the film. Great music. But again, it got too much like a music video at some points. And I really think they should have dove more into the characters, developed the characters, went more into his life. And I think that this film would have been better if John Singleton directed it. Originally, he was supposed to direct it. I forget what the problems were and why he wasn't selected to direct this film, but I think that it would have been better if he directed it. Or if, a Spike Lee or somebody like that directed it, where they could be a little bit more creative instead of just simply replaying a lot of Tupac's music and all that kind of stuff. Instead of just making it like a soundtrack. It could have been much more than that. And also, I just want to highlight the fact that the woman who played his mother, the sister from The Walking Dead, she's a great actress, and I think she did a great job. But I think that the way the script was written, it could have been better. But overall, I'll say you should see it if you're interested in watching it. If you had anticipated seeing it, it's not a bad movie at all, despite the criticism from people and all that kind of stuff. I really think that they should have reached out to Jada Pinkett Smith. I don't know if they even made an effort to talk to her. They should have conducted a lot of interviews with people and got input from as many people that knew Tupac as possible to make the movie true to his life. I think that this was a great film, but I not great. I'll say good. It's good enough. But I think that it was a missed opportunity. Just like that film about Miles Davis' life, the film that Cheatham did. I think that it could have been Cheadle. Yeah, excuse me, whatever. His name, Don Cheadle. He did that Miles Davis film, and I think that could have been better. That was a missed opportunity, just like this film. But it's good enough to watch in a movie. So with that, I encourage you all to check it out. Tell me what you think. If you saw it, tell me what you think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.